Hello everyone. This hour on Verbling, the next in my not getting results, no, next in my great short story series. We're working on short story 23, A Distant Episode by Paul Bowles. You've probably heard of Paul Bowles from the film The Sheltering Sky. In the previous classes, we read short stories by his wife, Jane Bowles, who was also one of his featured characters in that novel and the film that was based on the novel. In this story, a professor, oops, in this story, a professor returns to a small desert town where long ago he formed a friendship with a cafe keeper, and in scenes painted with Bowles's concrete sensory detail, which you'll notice is something very similar in Jane Bowles's writing. Soon, however, we have strong reasons to believe things aren't exactly right. So now that we've read a bit of Jane Bowles, let's explore Paul Bowles, and we can talk about both of those together. First, a quick bit about me. I'm John Eric, your Verbling teacher for this hour. I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. Here are 3 quick rules to help you participate. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up, which means when you're not speaking, turn off your microphone so we can keep the classroom quiet. When you are speaking, tune into the new words that you're learning, use them actively so that I can correct you. And finally, open up to your classmates. Relax and have fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. And with that in mind, if you give me 1 second, I'm going to download the story as a PDF so that I can share it with you on my screen. This will take just a second, because if I share my browser, sometimes things go funny. So I'm going to share it as a PDF. Give me just a second to download that. And while I'm doing that, let's say hello to Igor and
Hello, teacher.
and the other Igor's in it. I can't see who's there, but I think it's 2 Igors. Am I right?
I think you are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I call the other Igor Mr. Lima. Today I'm going to upgrade you. Today you are Dr. Lima. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Yes, you've been upgraded. You've won the status of doctor. Okay. Now on the screen you should be able to see the graphic for the story. Okay, so you can open that up on your computers or just follow along as you like. So, Dr. Lima and Dr. Igor with Cat, take a look at the graphic, at the picture. So what comes to mind when you look at that picture? Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. So, I won't say anything else. Looking at that picture, what comes to mind? How do you think that's going to foreshadow some of what we're going to be reading?
Well,
What the,
I see
yeah,
some kind of a fort, I think, or some kind of a city, and the city looks like it is situated somewhere in the Middle East, I think. Also, I can see the palm trees, and that means that the climate is warm. That is another evidence for the story being in the Middle East.
or Africa.
Yeah, but like I said, the architecture, it looks like it's from the Middle East, not from Africa, I
Yeah,
think.
but it's in Africa, actually.
Well,
uh, because I know the story. Um, but yeah, you're on the right track, definitely. And Dr. Lima, would you add anything to that? What comes to mind when you see that illustration?
The first thing that comes to my mind, it
Hmm?
looks a castle.
Ah, tell me more. It looks like a castle, by the way. It looks like a castle.
I- Yeah, castle. There are some trees, yeah, in front of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Igor said palm trees. And he's right. Those are palm trees.
Yeah. And I don't see many houses, many buildings. I just see one thing, a big castle.
So it also tells you that this is not a modern city, right? Because you don't see houses and buildings, you don't see cars. So I think that's pretty good. It kind of sets up the atmosphere of the story. Um, well, just a quick background before we start to read. So Paul Bowles is the husband of Jane Bowles, and we read two stories by Jane Bowles last week. Did you both read those stories? I don't remember. I think Igor, I remember you.
Well, I read one of his stories. It was about uh, um, a middle. It was situated in Middle East, and it was about a girl and a Middle East girl and their kind of weird relationship.
Oh, the story you read in this class, you mean?
Not in this class, in another class, but of this origin, I think.
No, but I'm saying one you read with me or one you read on your own? Was it
No,
one you?
the one I read with you.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. But that was by his wife. That was by Jane Bowles.
I see.
Yeah, yeah, that's his wife. And his wife is sort of this neglected writer, and she died very tragically when she was pretty young. So she didn't really have much of a writing career, but she was respected as a writer, but she's been sort of forgotten about. She's been overshadowed. And the story you read was edited by Paul Bowles. He was kind of like, apparently, he was kind of like the editor, and he changed some. We read two different endings of the story, if I remember right. So he did a little bit of helping her to fictionalize it because it was more or less it was a nonfiction essay originally. So it really happened. So she wrote about it. Well, Paul Bowles, I remember reading once that I don't remember exactly when he was saying this in an interview, but I guess it must have been a long time ago, like in the 50s or early 60s, some interview where they were talking about uh, James Dean, and he said, "Oh, I was the original James Dean. I was the original juvenile delinquent because before the term had been invented, I was already doing things like that." And he was, this movie Rebel Without a Cause, where the parents can't understand the generation gap between their kids, and the kids are all rebels, and they race cars around and do crazy things. So the story goes that when he was a young man, he flipped a coin, and I can't remember the two choices, if it was just to stay in New York or to get on the first ship out, or if it was to kill himself or get the first ship out. Something like that. I don't remember what it was, but he did some random thing where he flipped a coin, and whatever the choices were, he ended up getting on the ship and leaving, which is a little strange because he was kind of like a musical prodigy, and he was being mentored by one of the great composers of the 20th century, Aaron Copland. He was a student. So someone with that kind of musical career doesn't just take off. So I don't know if I have the time frame right, but I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. That he was already a musical student. Uh, I might have gone that a bit backwards, but anyway, that's the general idea. And he ended up traveling all of his life. He wrote 4 novels, something like 60 or more short stories, and he did a lot of other things too, so a lot of nonfiction things. One of the things he did was help introduce the Western world to the storytelling tradition of of um, of the cultures in Morocco where he lived. Not just there. He was in Sri Lanka for a long time, and then in Morocco after that. And there was a long tradition of storytelling. And I wonder how that influenced his own writing. Also, he spoke Arabic, which a lot of Westerners did do. So he was living there and he hung out with Westerners, but he learned Arabic and Spanish as well, as far as I remember, probably other languages. And he really traveled extensively. So he wrote about all this and he became a celebrity in the West because no one was doing that at the time. It wasn't easy to do it in the 1930s as well. So that's when it started. So he was a very mysterious figure for more than, well, from the time he started to publish his writing in the probably early 40s, late 30s, early 40s, up until, well, really even up until the time of his death in 1999. So it's an interesting thing, and a lot of people, and the thing to do was to go to Tangier and visit him. So he would just kind of accept visitors unannounced and entertain them in his house too. So it was kind of like a pilgrimage thing that young literary types would do. That's a little bit of background. So you know a little bit about his wife, you know a little bit about him. We're going to see if we can, this is kind of a long, short story, so we're going to see if we can do the first part today and maybe the second part tomorrow. Why don't we jump right in? Let me make this a little bit smaller. Hold on a second. There we go. And what I'll do as we read, I'm going to underline important vocabulary words in the original text, and I'm going to put words in bold that we should pay attention to pronunciation. So you'll have a list of words at the end which you can also take away and work with. So that's the plan. Are you ready? Shall we begin?
Yeah. Just one thing.
Sure.
Could you zoom out the screen a little bit?
Zoom out or zoom in? Make it bigger or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
also. Great.
Yeah?
Thank you.
But isn't it hard to read like that?
It's okay.
Oh, because
Because you want
I'm
to see the page?
using, yeah, I'm using an iPad, you see, and it's better for me read in this way.
Okay, fine. Yeah, no problem. All right. So, who's beginning? Who's starting us off? Oh, wait, you know what? I'm going to start off. Because I just want you to hear, I want you just to listen to the opening paragraph is important. I just want you to listen and try to imagine the scene. So actually, I'm going to read the first one, but then I'll turn it over to you. Okay? Listen carefully and tell me what you think about the first paragraph. A Distant Episode by Paul Bowles. The September sunsets were at their reddest the week the professor decided to visit Ein I can't even say this properly. Ein Tadorit, which is in the warm country. He came down out of the high flat region in the evening by bus with 2 small overnight bags full of maps, sun lotions, and medicines. 10 years ago he had been in the village for 3 days, long enough, however, to establish a fairly firm relationship with a cafe keeper, who had written him several times during the first year after his visit, if never since. Hassan Romani, the professor said over and over again as the bus bumped downward through ever warmer layers of air, now facing the flaming sky in the west, and now facing the sharp mountains. The car followed the dusty trail down the canyon into the air, which began to smell of other things besides the endless ozone of the heights, orange blossoms, pepper, sun-baked excrement, burning olive oil, rotten fruit. He closed his eyes happily and lived for an instant in the purely olfactory world the distant past returned. What part of it he could not decide. Wow, what an opening paragraph. What's great about his writing is that I don't know about you, but for me, you're really there in the place. It's very, as I said earlier, concrete. I can see it, I can feel it, and I can smell it. So, What's your impression of this of the place where he's at and what's going on? What's your impression of the first paragraph? Because it's kind of important. Oh,
Hard to say. I don't know. What you read about? I think it was about a man taking a trip to another place to visit Ein Tadarit, and there was a very good description of what it was like. I mean, the trip.
mhm.
And well,
I agree.
the
So,
mood there, it's not well. It's I think it's very uplifting. It's like he was relaxed when he was in the train or whenever.
okay, very good. So, what do you think about some of the description, by the way? Because you've got how would you describe what the place looks like and what the place smells like? Because these are two really strong images, the visual images and the olfactory images, let's call them, the smells.
Well, that's also kind of controversial, like blossoms,
Yeah,
excrement.
exactly. Whose excrement does it belong to? It doesn't say.
Well, I think it belongs to animals.
Maybe, okay, so it's kind of smells like a zoo, perhaps. All right, but
Yeah.
he's outside. And you've got this mixture of orange blossoms, pepper. So you've got this sweet smell and the smell of seasoning of food. And then you've got the smell of poo-poo, sun-baked animal dung or something. I hope it's animal dung and not people dung, but yeah.
And
And
rotten.
rotten fruit, which is a sweet smell too, but a bad sweet smell. So it doesn't seem like all I'm saying to you is that that must be important because it's the first thing that we encounter in the story. And Dr. Lima, what about the visual images? What's striking about the visual images in the first paragraph? What do you think? What's your impression?
I see a hot place
Hmm.
and looks like a savanna.
Looks like a, I didn't hear you. Looks like a
But no, the savanna. It's a kind
savanna.
of
Savannah.
forest.
Yeah. Savannah. It's right,
Yeah,
Savannah.
and as I can see, the author said about excrement. You see, it might be something from animals on savanna. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
orange. Yeah,
And what do you think
savanna is also a hot place, a warm place.
okay, but there's only one thing. It can't be entirely a savanna only because he says he's in the middle, now facing the flaming sky. Flame, is shamash, flames. So it's a red sky. And now facing the sharp mountains. So it, it's true, he could be passing through a savanna, but he obviously arrives in this mountain region and sharp mountains. So I don't know about you, but I have an image of a red sky, sort of like the end of the world. It seems almost apocalyptic in a way. Yes, it seems uplifting because the guy's happy, he's going to meet his old friend. Although, look at that. His old friend wrote during the first year after his visit, if never since. So maybe he hasn't heard from the guy in a long time. But the red sky and the sharp mountains. So it kind of gives me this sharp mountains. I wouldn't describe mountains as sharp. There seems to be something a little ominous going on. Do you know what I mean by ominous? Do you know that word?
I know,
Ominous.
I know this word.
Can you think of a simple way to say ominous?
Well, something that indicates that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, like an omen. An omen is like like a Greek omen in the Greek myths.
Yeah,
A
like
sign,
a bad
a,
sign.
a bad sign, exactly. So his friend hasn't written to him in a long time. The sky is fiery red. The mountains are sharp, like you could cut yourself on them. Um, and there's this mixture of weird smells, rotting smells, excrement smells, with the smell of food and sweets. I mean, so it just it can't be an accident, is all I'm saying. And it's September. September is the season when things start to die.
Well, if it's Africa, then it's not.
That's true, yeah. I don't know. In South Africa, it's the opposite, but in North Africa, I don't really know. How are the seasons in North Africa? Because I'm only, what, 2 hours from this place where I live, so I don't know. Maybe North Africa. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we don't know exactly where he is, but um, let me just see if I can tell you where he's supposed to be. Hang on just a second. Uh, da, 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 da. The professor is visiting the town of Ain Tatorit, a fictitious city, ostensibly to reacquaint. No, it doesn't say where it is. Sorry. I'm just trying to see if it says exactly where it's supposed to
I
be.
thought Ain't the Reed is not a town, but a woman.
No. It's a town. It's a town. I was just trying to see if anyone had in the criticism of the story, if anyone had identified where they are. But anyway, he's to reacquaint himself with an old acquaintance and to do some basic academic work to study the dialects of the warm country. So he's a specialist in the Arabic language and he's studying dialects. Well, we'll find more about that in a minute. I'm just reading from the Wikipedia page. Anyway, so Igor, why don't you pick it up from the chauffeur until the next page.
Who is chauffeur?
Chauffeur is the person who drives the car. The motorist, the chauffeur, the driver.
The cartman.
Sorry?
The cartman.
The cartman? Why, is he in a cart? I think he's in some kind of a does it say what he's driving in? He's on a bus. He's in a bus, so it's the bus driver.
Ah, I see. Oh,
But wait. The chauffeur whose seat the professor shared. Yeah, I don't know. I guess he says he's sharing the same seat. So we don't know yet. We have to find out. We'll find out. Go ahead. You read.
The chauffeur whose seat the professor shared spoke to him without taking his eyes from the road. Was etos geolog?
Vous êtes géologue? Are you a geologist?
Well, it sounds like like gibberish.
No, it's just French. Go ahead.
A geologist? Ah, no, I'm a linguist. There are no languages here, only dialects. Exactly. I'm making a survey of variations on Maghrebi.
Keep going.
That's right, Maghrebi.
Keep going. It's good.
Yeah. The chauffeur was scornful. Keep on going south, he said. You'll find some languages you never heard of before. As they drove through the town gate, the usual swarm of urchins rose up out of the dust and ran screaming beside the bus. The professor folded his dark glasses, put them in his pocket, and as soon as the vehicle had come to a standstill, he jumped out, pushing his way through the indignant boys who clutched at his luggage in vain, and walked quickly into the Grand Hotel Saharian. Out of its 8 rooms, there were 2 available, one facing the market and the other, a smaller and cheaper one, given into a tiny yard full of refuse and barrels, where 2 gazelles wandered about. Gazelles wandered about. He took the smaller room and pouring the entire pitcher of water into the tin basin, began to wash the grit from his face and ears. The afterglow was nearly gone from the sky, and the pinkness in objects was disappearing, almost as he watched. He lit the carpet lamp and winced at its odor.
Okay, very good. So, just I underline 4 words: scornful, urchins, gazelles, and winced, because I think these are words which are maybe a little more difficult. So, scornful, what would you
No.
say?
Well, I think scorn is some kind of a spike, so he was not uh, very good to him.
It's some kind of a what? I didn't hear the word.
Spike.
Spike?
Yeah.
What do you think, Dr. Lima? Can you think of a synonym or a simpler way to say it?
Mm,
Unfriendly.
no
Yeah.
guess.
Say again? I couldn't hear you. Say again?
I have no guess.
Okay. So it's mocking. He's mocking him. Maybe he's maybe he's a bit angry or a bit condescending, but in some way he's mocking him. To be scornful is to mock. Clear?
Yeah.
Igor. Yeah? Igor, understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. And urchins.
I don't know what it is. Well,
So go ahead, yeah. What do you think?
well, I think I've heard urchins is, sea animals, like,
Exactly, right? The real meaning is sea animals, right? But here they're not sea animals. What are they?
but stingy insects, like mosquitoes.
No, no, no. They're children. They're children. We have an expression which is street urchins. Just like the little sea animals appear from nowhere, little children, homeless children, or whatever they are, probably homeless, appear from nowhere and beg for money.
Well, this word swarm, it really uh, it really made me confused because what I've
Yeah,
heard, like a swarm of insects. I think it's
exactly. And that's how they're moving, like a swarm of insects. They're all moving together, or like a school of fish. Urchin is usually like out of a Charles Dickens novel. Those characters that are poor and they're give me 1 pence, please. Begging for money, usually dirty, don't have the proper clothes. So that's
like,
the image of an
like
urchin.
scavengers.
Yeah. Or like what was the movie in India? It was just on TV the other day. The Danny Boyle movie. The Indian Danny Boyle movie with the kids. I forgot the name. Oh, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? What's the Oh, you come on, you didn't see that movie? About the Indian kids who won the TV game show. It's like from 5 years ago or something. Anyway, those are street urchins. Those are classic street urchins. I just forgot the name of the movie. Slumdog Millionaire. That's it. Did you see that movie, Slumdog Millionaire?
I did, but it was in Russian. Sorry.
Okay, but you know the movie, right? So those are street urchins because they have to go out and beg and give money to these criminals or whatever they were, right? So they're street urchins. They run up when tourists come. Let's say a quick hello to, I can't see the name. It looks like El Corchi. Is that right? How do I
Yeah,
say your
that's right.
name?
Yeah, that's right.
El Corchi. Where are you from?
I'm from Morocco, teacher.
From Morocco. We're reading a story that is more or less in Morocco. I don't know exactly where it's supposed to take place. Maybe you can tell me. Do you know Paul Bowles? He was very famous in Morocco. Do you know the writer?
Paul Ball? No, I
Ah,
don't know.
maybe you're in a different part. Where are you in Morocco? Where are you located?
From Tangier.
From Tangier. Ah, well, on the
Yeah.
top of the hill in Tangier was Paul Bowles' house, um, in the Medina. I think
In
it's the
the Medina.
Medina. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
So um, we're reading about we're reading one of the stories by Paul Bowles, who was famous in the West because at a time when no one really traveled, in the 1930s and 1940s, when people didn't travel, he went to all over the globe basically. He traveled around Africa, around in the Middle East, and he wrote about it. Of course, he wrote fiction, but his fiction was very influenced by local people, particularly by the great tradition of storytelling in the cafes of Tangier and in Morocco, in the north of Morocco, where he lived. But he traveled many places, he also translated a lot of the storytellers into English and published them in the West. So it's interesting. Anyway, we're just beginning the story, and so far we've picked up with our fictional professor, so he's a linguist, who's traveling to a fictional town. We think it's somewhere in Morocco, but it may be not, because it says gazelles, so maybe it's in another country, in farther south in Africa. Though I don't think there are gazelles in Morocco, are there? Do you know what gazelles are?
No, I don't know.
Igor? Dr. Lima? Do you know what
Well,
happened? Karachi left.
I,
Come
I,
back!
I think a gazelle is
No
like
idea.
a small deer.
Yeah, it's like a small deer. Yeah, something like that. And they run fast and they jump. So we usually think about them somewhere like in Kenya or something like that.
Well,
Um,
I think the gazelles are much more agile than deers.
I see.
they're very fast.
Yeah, and
Um,
they're more fragile also.
and they taste great, especially to lions. And the last vocabulary word for you, Igor, was winced. He lit the carbide lamp and winced at its odor. Do you know what winced is?
Like sniffed.
Not sniffed, but he's sniffing and then he has this reaction to the
Well,
odor.
like, is it about apshi?
About what?
About, snoozing.
Yeah, let's imagine this for a second. You're fooling around with I don't know, like kids do, your brother, your best friend, and he pretends that he's going to hit you and he takes a swing, right? What's your immediate reaction? Well, without thinking about it, you wince. That means you kind of, right? You have this kind of facial reaction, you kind of get out of the way.
So he didn't like it, so it's like
Exactly.
he
He didn't like.
he distorted his face in this very grimy kind of shape.
So again, we've got these strong odors appearing right in the beginning of the story, this time of carbide, just like earlier, the rotting fruit. So let's say a quick hello to Yuki, who's just joining us. Hello, Yuki. How are you?
Hi. Fine. Thank you. I'm sorry for the rain.
So we just began. We're doing Paul Bowles, and you'll probably find some similarities between The Sheltering Sky and this story. It's not the same. He wrote a novel, Sheltering Sky, but this is a story, and there's a lot of similarities in the themes that he writes about. So we can
Yes.
talk about that as we go on. All right, Dr. Lima, I'd like you to pick it up from After Dinner.
After dinner, the professor walked slowly through the streets to Hussein Ramani Cafe, whose back room hung hazardously out above the river.
Hazardously. Like this, hazardously.
Once again,
Hazardously. Hazard.
ha
Zerd.
hazard,
Dusly.
hazardously,
That's it.
hazardously. Oh, the
You said it right a
entrance
second
was
ago.
very
You said it right a second ago. One more time. Just get the Dusly, because you have to hear the lee at the end. Dusly. Repeat.
dusty,
Good. Hazardously.
hazardously,
Perfect.
hazardously. Oh. The entrance was very low, and he had to bend down slightly to get in. A man was standing the fire. There was one guest sipping tea. The Kawaji tried to make him take a seat at the other table in the front room, but the professor walked early, early, early ahead into the back room and sat down. The moon shining through the reed
Lattice work.
lattice work, and
Right.
there was not a sound outside but the occasional distant bark of a dog. He changed tables so he could see the river. It was dry, but there was a pool here and there that reflected the bright night sky. The Kawaji came in and wiped off the table.
Right. And Kawaji means shopkeeper. So I guess that's a dialect word in Arabic. So it's a shopkeeper. And I think it's Kawaji. Anyway, it's not an easy word. And one more thing, the pronunciation in the middle, airily. The professor walked airily. Can you say that? Airily.
Thoroughly.
That's it. So airily means full of air, right? Or up in the air. So somehow pleasant or happy or light. The professor walked airily ahead into the back room and sat down because he's going to see what he thinks is his old friend from years ago. What else do we want to say? What do you think about this cafe, Mr. Dr. Lima? What do you think about this cafe? Does it sound like a nice place to you? Do you like it?
Mm-mm. I
No?
didn't.
It's interesting because he has to bend down to get through the entrance. So what kind of cafe is this? He has to bend down just to get through the door. Either he's very tall or it's constructed in kind of a strange place, maybe kind of below the street. And there's someone tending to a fire, sipping tea. What else can we say about it? And it's at night, right? The moon shining through the lattice work. And it's very, very quiet. So what's interesting is how all those details are so clear. Right? There's no the description is very, very concrete, very primary colors, or in this case, black, white, red, and very sort of tangible. You feel like you can touch the things there. It was dry, but there was a pool here, and that reflected the bright night sky. So you really get a sense of the place. Well, why don't you continue, Lima? Why don't you continue for the dialogue a little bit? Then we'll turn it over to Yuki. Keep going, Lima.
Okay. Does this cafe still belong to Hassan Ramani? He asked him in the Morebi he had taken for years to learn. The man replied in bad French, he's deceased. Oh, meu Deus.
Deceased.
He deceased.
Right.
Deceased? Repeated the professor, without noticing the absurdity of the word.
Absurdity.
Absurdity of the word. Really? When? I don't know, said the
Kawaji.
Wanchi.
That's it.
Kawaji. Yeah. That's the end, no?
What? Continue. It's okay. Kawaji.
Kawaji. Wanchi. This is the last paragraph, no?
Okay. If you want to stop, you can. It's up to you.
Yeah, because the last sentence, as you can see,
Oh, sorry.
it
I'm
is.
not looking at the
I,
PDF. I'm sorry. Sorry.
okay, I don't know. Sede coage, monte.
Sorry. I was looking at the shared docs instead of the PDF that I'm sharing with you. Sorry about that. All right. Well, let's give Yuki a chance as well. Yuki, why don't you pick it up from... So, Yuki, do you understand
Yes.
what's going on so far?
Yes. Yes. This part, what is happened in this part, I understand.
So, before, this American professor is going to visit his old friend. He studies the dialects of Arabic-speaking places and countries and tribes, right? He's a linguist.
Yes.
So he's just returned, and he's gone by bus, and in the very first paragraph, he's arriving at sunset. The sky is red. There's strange smells in the area, like the smell of food, the smell of fruit, the smell of excrement, the smell of rotting things. So it's just kind of an ominous feeling. And he arrives, and we just find out that the guy he was going to visit is dead. So that's as far as we got. Could you pick it up from the top of the page? Yes, but I don't understand.
Yes. Yes, but I don't understand. The man was already out of the room, fanning the fire. The professor sits still, feeling lonely, and arguing with himself that to do so was ridiculous. Soon the Gawaji returned with the tea. He paid him and gave him an enormous tip, for which he received a grave bow. Tell me,
Bow. Grave bow.
grave
He's
bow.
bowing his head.
Bowing is a very special habit for Japanese,
Exactly.
not for you. Usual habit for grieving for Japanese. Tell me, he said, as the others started away, can one still get those little boxes made from camel udders?
Right?
Yes.
What udders are?
Udders, it is milk is going.
Right. Just like with cows. When you milk a cow, you have to pull on the udders of the cow. So this
Yes.
is camel udders. Okay.
Camel udders. Okay. The man looked angry. Sometimes the Liguibat bring in those things. We do not buy them here. Then insolently,
Insolently.
insolently,
Insolent. That's it. Yeah.
insolently, and then insolently in Arabic. And why a camel udder box? Because I like them, reported the professor. And then because he was feeling a little exalted, he added, I like them so much I want to make a collection of them, and I will pay you 10 francs for every one you can get me. Kuhantachi
I have
said,
no idea. I have no idea what that means. Kamstachi or Kamstash?
Kamstach, said Kuanji, opening his left hand rapidly 3 times in succession. Never. 10. No possible. But wait until later and come with me. You can give me what you like, and you will get camera order boxes if there are any. He went out into a front room, leaving the professor to drink his tea and listen to the growing chorus of dogs and barked and howled as
Howled.
barked and howled as the moon rose higher into the sky. A group of customers came into the front room and sat talking for an hour or so. When they had left, the Kwanji put out the
I think it's Kouaji. Kouaji.
The Kouaji.
I don't speak Arabic, but I think that's how it is.
It's a kind of waiter, yeah?
Yeah, shopkeeper, maybe.
A
Yeah.
shopkeeper, okay. The Kawanji put out the fire and stood in the doorway, putting on his burnous.
Burnus.
Come, he said. Outside in the street, there was very little movement. The booth was all closed, and the only light came from the moon. An occasional pedestrian passed and granted brief greeting to the Kawanji. Everything knows you, said the professor to cut the silence between them. Yes.
Just a quick pause here. A couple vocabulary words like burnus. Burnus is a cloak, and so if you look it up, you see some pictures. But basically, it shows you where he is, because burnus, from the Berber or Maghrebi, I don't know how to say it, Arab burnus, a long cloak of woolen fabric with a hood, usually white in color, worn by Berbers. So I guess he's actually in North Africa because that's where the Berbers are. Anyway, if you go to Wikipedia or whatever, you can see the long white cloaks. That's one thing I remember from being in Tangier, was everyone wearing cloaks. It kind of felt like a Halloween. Everyone seemed like they were dressed. It takes a little while to get used to. Everyone wore these long white cloaks. It was winter, so they weren't all white though. They were green and other colors, but they're long white. Do you know what I mean by cloak? Like almost like a cape. Clear? Cape,
Yes.
cloak, yeah? Okay. So that was one, burnus. Insolently, remember earlier, the man, sometimes the Ragibat bringing those things, we do not buy them here. Then insolently in Arabic, why a camel out of box? So insolently, can you think of a simple way to say that? Just so I know that it's clear. Is that a good thing or a bad thing if you're insolent?
Bluntly, no?
Say again?
Bluntly,
Bluntly, you mean?
bluntly, yeah.
Bluntly. Okay, yeah. Like being blunt, being rude in a very, very direct way. Right.
Yes.
So there's obviously a little bit of tension here. And let me ask you something. What do you think about a character who goes to visit his old friend and has no idea that the guy died years ago? What do you think about this professor? What does that say about his character?
I suppose that he has a special connection with the person who died 1 year ago here.
But he doesn't know that he's dead. He shows up to visit him, and he only finds out that he's dead when he arrives at the cafe.
Oh.
What do you think about that kind of professor? I mean, wouldn't he have done a little bit of research before he showed up?
He conducted research in this area, and suddenly he disappeared. So that's why the protagonist of this story came here.
No, that's not why. No, he came here to visit him.
Ah.
He has no idea that the guy died. He just found out when he ordered the tea. In fact, I think he gave the guy, the waiter, the Koaji, a big tip as a way to say thank you for the information. And the guy gives this grave bow. So he's probably being judged. How could you not know? Or, it seems, at least as a reader, I think, how could he not know that the guy he's visiting has already passed away? Is he that clueless? So it says something about his character. I don't know what it says, but it says something. So, Igor, we're back to you on the next page. We're still having the conversation between the professor and the Kawaji after he has his tea, and he asks about the camel udder boxes. He's offended the guy. Can you pick it up from yes on the next page?
Okay. Yes, I wish everyone knew me, said the professor, before he realized how infantile such a remark must sound. No one knows you, said his companion gruffly. They had come to the other side of the town, on the promontory above the desert, and through a great rift in the wall, the professor saw the white endlessness broken in the foreground by dark spots of oases. They walked through the opening and followed a winding road between rocks.
The winding road?
What?
The winding road.
I see. It's like a serpent.
Exactly. Yeah.
A winding road between rocks, downward toward the nearest small forest of the palms. The professor thought, he may cut my throat, but his cafe, he would surely be found out.
This is what the professor thinks about his new friend.
Yeah.
Do you think he's overreacting?
Well, you never know with those, people.
With what people? He's just a shopkeeper. Come
Whoa.
on. Don't be like that. What's a promontory, by the way? Because we saw that he on the other side of town on the promontory above the desert. Just so that's clear, if something's prominent, it stands out. So what's a promontory? What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
No, but think about the word. Prominent means to stand out. So
Yeah.
promontory
It's like
is
something like a flat space that sticks out or something.
that sticks out. Yes, like it's a hill. It's a hill, basically, or like a little mountain, or like a ridge. So land that sticks out. Okay, just so it's clear. By the way, if there's any questions about vocabulary, just ask anytime. So I want to make sure everything is clear as we read. Okay,
Well,
keep going.
It's
Sorry, go ahead.
just difficult to read.
It is. But look how much you're improving. The important thing is that we read, clarify vocabulary, and summarize as often as we can, so that you're not losing the story.
I see, but I feel like, I'm just stuttering on every word.
No, you're not, because I would stop you if you were. You're not. It sounds pretty good, right? The only issue is big words like winding, because wind and wine have the same spelling, so it's easy to misunderstand if you change the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Other than that, it sounds fine. It sounds pretty good. Your V's sound like W's. So sometimes you'll say, earlier I had a few, what was it? For example, you said vehicle instead of vehicle, and available instead of available. But that's a very minor problem, right? But other than that, no, it sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good. Okay. Okay, keep going to the end of the page there, please. Igor?
Is it far? He asked casually. Are you tired? Countered the Kawaji. They're expecting me back at the Hotel Saharian, he lied. You can't be there and here, said the Kawaji. The professor laughed. He wondered if it sounded uneasy to the other. Have you owned Romani's Cafe long? I worked there for a friend. The reply made the professor more unhappy than he had imagined it would. Oh, will you work tomorrow? That's impossible to say.
Wait. Last little bit here. Keep going.
The professor stumbled on a stone and fell, scraping his hand. The Quaggi said, "Be careful."
What do you think's going on here? What do you think about their conversation? Is someone hiding something? Does it seem a little ominous?
Well, that seems like they're luring him somewhere.
Exactly. And I get the impression the professor feels that because he has this thought earlier. What does he say? He may cut my throat, but his cafe, he would surely be found out, right? So he's trying to reason with himself, but I get the sense that he thinks he's being lured somewhere, and nothing is being said between the two of them. Also, this line, "I worked there for a friend." The reply made the professor more unhappy. Why do you think the reply made him more unhappy than he thought it would? Does it mean something?
Well, that doesn't mean that he's a real Quaggi or whatever.
Maybe something happened to the real owner, right?
Yeah.
Or
maybe this something is going to happen to this professor.
could be. Let's finish it up. We've got just about 2 minutes, so just to the end of part 1. So we're back to Dr. Lima, the esteemed Dr. Lima. Could you take us to the bottom of the page?
Okay. The sweet black odor of rotting meat hung in the air suddenly.
Suddenly. I want to hear the "ly" at the end. Suddenly.
Suddenly.
Good.
Said the professor, shocking. What is it? The Quaggi had covered his face with his bornoz and did not answer. Soon the stench had been left behind. They were on flat ground. Ahead the path was bordered on each side by a high mud wall. There was no breeze, and the palms were quite still, but behind the walls was the sound of running water. Also the odor of human excrement was almost constant as they walked between the walls.
So now we know it's human excrement, not animal excrement that they're smelling. That could be important. Keep going, Lima.
The professor waited until he thought it seemed logical for him to ask with a certain degree of annoyance.
Good.
But where are we going? Soon? No, but where are we going? Soon, said the guide, pausing to gather some stone in the
ditch.
Yeah,
there you
ditch. Go. Pick up some stones, he advised. Here are bed dogs. Where? Asked the professor. He stopped, got there large ones with pointed edge.
So we're going to stop there because I have to start the business class. But I'll be back tomorrow at the same hour to do part 2 and, if possible, part 3. Okay? So we're going to talk about it. We'll summarize it in the beginning of class tomorrow at the same hour. We'll talk about what we've learned so far, and we'll continue on as the professor is lured deeper into the desert. Okay, I've got to run. I'll be back in just a minute. But bring your questions to the beginning of tomorrow's class, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay? I'll be back in just a minute for the business class. Bye for now.